The dormant scams that actually worked. Salabiu Teslim, the £1 million Juju scam. Our first story begins in Lagos, where Dr. Lateef Bello and his family got sucked into a fraud that is both ridiculous and mind-blowing. So, Dr. Bello has a son who was very sick at the time. We don't know the nature of the sickness, but what we know is that the sickness was severe enough for Mr. Bello and his family to seek spiritual help. In his desperate search for spiritual intervention, Dr. Bello was introduced to a gang of fraudsters who claimed to be spiritual healers that use traditional rituals, aka Juju. The fraudsters convinced the doctor that his whole family needed cleansing, and what better way to do that than by drinking concoctions and visiting a shrine in Oshogbo. After paying over 200,000 naira initial deposit for the first ritual, the fraudsters told Dr. Bello that even more magic was needed. They brought out their secret weapon, a 100-year-old Baba from Ijebu-Igbo, and guess what? This Baba communicated with them from behind the curtain in the most dramatic performance you have ever seen. Then these fraudsters demanded for the blood of pigeons, which will be drunk by 12 white witches because they only drink pigeon blood. They milked this poor man for another 1 million naira. Finally, after pretending to cleanse Dr. Bello's son, they dropped the bombshell that Dr. Bello needs to pay £1 million in cash for extra ornament called Oluomo, which they claim Mr. Bello's wife will wear for protection. Seriously, how did they come up with this stuff? Dr. Bello raised £800,000 and handed it over in cash. After collecting the cash, they kept stringing him along, asking for more money, sending him on wild goose chases to rivers for more rituals. They later tried to blackmail the family into paying 50 million naira, or else they'll leak the videos of the rituals. It's like they made a scam within a scam. Thankfully, Dr. Bello finally snapped out of it after losing nearly 675 million naira, which was over £1 million at the time, and went to the authorities. The EFCC swooped in and arrested the main fraudsters, including the guy who pretended to be a 100-year-old spiritual elder. Apparently, they weren't spiritual healers, they were just plain old scammers with some serious wild imaginations. The case has been adjourned different times and reassigned to a different judge. The Bello family still wait for justice and to see if they can get their money back. Prophet Adeni James, Canada visa fraud. Back in 2021, during a regular church service at the CAC Freedom City Prophetic and Deliverance Ministry, Prophet James, the general overseer, supposedly received a divine revelation about one of his church members, Oluwole Babarisan. He dramatically calls out the brother in the Lord, but instead of just praying for him, like any regular prophet, he asks brother Oluwole which country he would love to travel to. Because obviously, visions from God now come with travel package options, and our guy Oluwole picked Canada. Here is where it gets even better. After convincing Oluwole that his Canada dream was legit, the prophet tells him that he knows a guy in Lagos who can handle everything for just a small fee of 3.9 million naira. Imagine, Oluwole, excited about the news, sold off all his property and even took out loans to cover out almost 4 million naira, all because of a vision. Months passed, Oluwole packed his bags, waiting for the magical phone call, but nothing happened. When he asked the prophet what's up with his trip, the prophet stalled. Eventually, Oluwole realized that this was all just one big scam. Eventually, Oluwole had had enough and filed a complaint with the EFCC. Now, the so-called prophet is in hot water with the authorities, looking like his next trip could be to a courtroom rather than a pulpit. So, what's the lesson here? If someone tells you they've had a divine revelation about your future, maybe you don't start by selling off your property and taking out loans, especially if the vision comes with a price tag. Isuku Jude, the EFCC impersonator. Meet Isuku Jude, a man who thought he could outsmart people by pretending to be an EFCC officer. That's right, this guy decided it would be a brilliant idea to impersonate the same people who arrest scammers for a living. Sometime in April 2024, our mastermind, Jude, walked into Enugu State with his new fake identity. He somehow convinced a man named Justin to hand over 1.1 million naira by threatening him that he will be arrested for fraud. So, what's his grand plan? Pretend to be an EFCC officer, get the cash, and vanish into thin air. But there's a tiny little flaw to this genius plan, And that's the real EFCC exists, and they don't take kindly to people pretending to be them. Fast forward to the courtroom, when Jude was hit with 2 counts, impersonation and obtaining by false pretense. He pleaded not guilty, even with the mountain of evidence against him. He is now chilling in Enugu State Correctional Facility, waiting for his trial date if he cannot meet his bail condition of 2 million naira. Ida Ogo and Agbo Okute, stealing from the dead. Our masterminds are Ida Ogo and Agbo Okute, 2 former staffs of Union Bank in Makurdi. These guys had access to a deceased customer's account, and instead of, doing their jobs and respecting the dead, they decided to steal 4.1 million naira from the poor man's account. Their trouble started when the family of the deceased approached the bank to get the account details of their lost relative. And when the family saw the balance and realized that money was missing, they immediately raised a red flag. What were these guys expecting? That nobody would notice a missing 4 million naira? After the family complained, the bank launched an internal investigation, and surprise, surprise, it didn't take long to figure out who was behind it. These brilliant scammers procured a debit card for the deceased account, signed off on it, and started draining the money. Yes, because it's smart to leave paper trail to your crime in an obvious way that even a child could follow it. Unsurprisingly, these guys were both sales and service associates at the bank, meaning they should have known better. They weren't some outsiders hacking into the system. They were literally part of the process. So how did they think they were going to get away with it? As expected, our 2 criminal masterminds were arrested on July 21, 2024. Honestly, I'm surprised it took them this long to get caught. The investigations were so straightforward, it's almost like they handed themselves over on a silver platter. Kamaludin Lawal and 3 businessmen, Naira Recycling Syndicate. In a world of scams and fraud, there's always a new low. Meet Kamaludin Lawal, a banker, and his 3 business-savvy friends, Ismail Ibrahim Ilu, Lamido Bala, and Abba Mohammed. Together, they had a bright idea. The crew would collect old, damaged Naira notes from banks, those bills that are so torn up that no one wants to use them anymore. They would carefully remove a few notes from each bundle, just enough to not be too obvious. They would then take the remaining cash to their inside man at another bank, none other than Kamaludin, who would act like everything was cool and deposit the bundles without counting them. But how dumb do you have to be to think that a bank of all places wouldn't notice missing money? Banks are literally designed to count money and keep track of every single note. Yet, these guys thought they could just keep removing bills, slip them into their own pockets and walk away like nothing happened, hoping that nobody would count the damaged notes. Well, it didn't work for long. The EFCC got wind of their little scheme and swooped in. The gang was caught red-handed at the Katinkwari market in Kano. 7.5 million naira was recovered from them. Kamaludin and his friends clearly overestimated just how much they could fool the system. In their minds, it was a foolproof plan, but now they are looking at serious charges, all for a scheme that was bound to fail from the start. So, what's the lesson here? Don't play games with money, especially when your entire plan can be unraveled with basic maths. Thanks for watching. If you're enjoying these stories, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more intriguing stories just like this. Remember, stay safe.